I kind of went back through some of your old content today, and I remember seeing one post that could have stood to be slightly controversial. And I'd love to hear how the community management of this post went. But it was the idea of you
Sure.
bringing up the fact that a 2 week notice is completely irrelevant, or not completely irrelevant, but needs to be addressed at a more, you know, in a more open playing field, because maybe that advice is a little bit tired and cliched and doesn't apply to everybody in 2022. You don't have to necessarily go into that piece in particular, but how has it been with some of your hot takes or some of your opinions that go against the grain of what society tells you that you need to be doing from a career perspective?
It's tough to cover like everything that I've done, but essentially like on Instagram, I answer every single DM. So I've gotten thousands of DMs at this point. I answer all of them. I've also got a private LinkedIn community, and from there, people are sharing the different experiences that they're having. And what I've started to realize, and just looking at the 2 weeks notice thing, is one, the expectation from employers comes from a little bit more of an old school mentality that isn't necessarily wrong. I'm not saying that you shouldn't put in a 2 weeks if you feel like that's right, but not every situation requires you to do that. And I think that oftentimes it almost can be a disadvantage because if you put in your 2 weeks before you're ready, and a lot of people might do that, then you can create a strategic, not a strategically ideal situation as somebody who's trying to find a different opportunity.
Right.
But I think that one of the biggest things is that I'm actually in the weeds and talking to a lot of the people who are going through it versus I think that a majority of the people in the career tips and job search space usually are holding on to 1 to 3 kind of like pillar beliefs, right? And they're not going and challenging their own beliefs by going and talking to the people who are going through it. If we were talking to somebody who is launching a product or service, and they were saying, well, we're just only going to go and listen to all the people who design these systems or who are only on one side of the situation, aka if you're only talking to people in HR and only talking to people who are hiring managers, you're missing a whole piece of it, which are the people who are actually going through the job search process. And something that I think that I've really narrowed in on is going in and actually focusing on the people who are going through it. And that has given me way more insight than listening to somebody who's been in HR for 15 plus years and thinks that they know everything that's going on when literally 2 years ago, the job search market is different from what it was the year after it and is completely different from the last 6 months, where
Right.
there's been a lot more of an employee market. And
Right.
so I think that one, people are holding on to kind of old world beliefs or like kind of resting on the laurels instead of continuing to challenge their own assumptions and also going in and actually doing the work. That's the number one thing that I'm seeing is that a lot of people is like they're just not going and doing the work. They're not going to go and talk to a dozen plus people every single day to go and understand what is actually going on the ground level. And if
Right.
you're not doing that, then of course it's not going to seem, and most people aren't going to do that. And so if most people aren't going to do that, of course the tips that I give are going to go against the grain because you're one of the few people who's going and putting in the work, and you have the actual first party data because you're talking directly to the actual sources versus going and reading a headline, which I know a lot of people do. Like they'll go and look at a survey that's like 100 people, and that is, I forget what the word is, but basically like those 100 people now represent 100 million, and that makes absolutely no sense.
Right.
Like it's just the numbers aren't there to justify that assumption.